This is episode 7. Episode 7 of Crime Tales. Hope all is well. Thank you for checking out the stream. What this stream does is we go over true crime stories, stories that I would not be able to cover, kind of share their story, and give you my thoughts. I've been really inconsistent with this. You know how it is, time. But the channel right here, I am Thomas, deals with pop culture, true crime, famous graves. There'll be videos coming out this week, shorts as well. Please do subscribe. Let's talk about Herman Mudgett. Herman Mudgett, a charming swindler, Ignatius crook. Herman Webster Mudgett would stop at nothing to make a dollar. His greed and cunning made his life full of forgery, fraud, just games, shenanigans. Of his countless victims, scores lost not only their money, but their lives. In a place, killing machine, they called his castle. As pieced together later by detectives and reporters, Herman's life began in New Hampshire in 1860. He married the first of his 3 wives there when he was 18 and attended medical school at her expense. He practiced legitimate medicine only briefly after graduation, however, opting instead for a variety of quasi medical and entrepreneurial scams. This included a bogus cure for alcoholism, some energetic real estate ripoffs, and then he had a hustle where he rigged up a tank full of smelly liquid with wires, pulleys, and hoses, one of which secretly tapped a city gas main. He claimed that this invention turned water to natural gas and sold the contraption. He sold that contraption for $2,000. Herman conducted most of these nefarious enterprises under his favorite alias, his alias that he used, H. H. Holmes. Herman's first steps towards mass murder were apparently taken in Chicago in 1887. Hired to help run a pharmacy, Dr. Holmes first made himself indispensable to the widowed owner, then somehow got rid of the woman and laid claim to her property. With the drugstore as a respectable base, he came up with a scheme upon swindle and soon was able to begin on a huge lot across the street, the crowning jewel of his wicked empire. Presiding over an ever shifting stream of workmen, none of whom knew the overall plan of the building. He created a conjoined row of three-story buildings. The ground floor was devoted to shops. The top was devoted to Herman's office and private apartments. In between, Herman had built a nightmare kind of maze of 100 windowless rooms. There were stairways to nowhere there, secret doors, chutes that led to a torture room, and a mortuary in the basement. The House of Horrors. The castle opened its doors as a hotel in time for the world's Columbian Exposition in 1893. Now Herman, he considered himself handsome and very suave. He was a proprietor, after all, of this new grandiose building, right? And well, what he did is he had placed newspaper advertisement, offering women lucrative work or advantages, or in a advantageous marriage in a large city. One after another, pretty applicants responded to the ads, and Herman persuaded each of them to bring him all she had possessed, as he bargained or wooed her into captivity. Over the next 3 years, a steady procession of gullible women took up residence in this castle, in this house, which proved to harbor a warren of soundproof, escape proof death chambers. You ain't getting out of that house. Peepholes were everywhere. Doors were wired to activate a buzzer if the prisoners opened them, and gas lines permitted the murderer rather, to asphyxiate an inmate as well. Transformed abruptly from a mistress to a corpse, the victim could be shoved through a secret door in Herman's apartment to fall without ceremony to the basement. Now Herman took some of the sufferers below stairs while they were still alive, there to torture them if he felt that they still had riches to reveal. Now once they were dead, he had many means of disposal: a metal door in a dirt floor, hid a large lime pit, and behind one wall was a furnace big enough and hot enough to serve as a crematorium. There he processed corpse in numbers. Remember what he was doing. Women were coming in. He convinced them to give everything of all their worldly possessions, and almost like a mind game, right? Impossible to fully understand what was going on there, even years later after the fact. trying to get every last cent from his victims. Herman would even arrange to sell several bodies as cadavers or as a clean skeleton to nearby medical schools for, you know, classes. Ironically, it was not murder but fraud that eventually led to Herman's arrest. Investigating an East Coast insurance scam, authorities had discovered that Herman had dispatched a Philadelphia man who was a partner in the scheme. Now, while the killer was in custody in Philadelphia, part of his castle burned. Despite the fire, police had been able to amass evidence of the slaughter through the summer, and the list of suspected victims grew to 20. Now, authorities they had later placed the likely toll at closer to 100, including men and children as well as women. But Herman now, he was never charged with the Chicago atrocities. Philadelphia authorities would not extradite him. They tried him for murder, and he confessed not only to the slaying of his partner, but to 27 other killings and an additional 6 attempted homicides. In at least one case, he reported with evidence shock that he killed even though there was no money in it, nothing to gain. Quote, I committed this and the other crimes for the pleasure of killing my fellow beings. He confessed to hear their cries for mercy. He had become, he said, a moral idiot. Fittingly, his confession itself was yet another swindle, omitting known victims and naming several women still living. Now Herman, this great individual, sarcasm obviously, was hung to death May of 1896 in Philadelphia, even while the investigators still pieced together his reign of evil. Not only in Chicago, but in Indianapolis and Toronto as well. Even in death, he remained unique. At his request, his body, encased in a pine casket, was embedded in cement and buried 10 feet deep under 2 feet of cement. Now, he wished, he said, to be safe from grave robbers and medical science. A man of, I don't think many people have missed this man in society. Imagine thinking you're going for opportunity and then you go into this house of torture. This gives you an idea of how this looked like. There's Herman and there's the built castle. I hope all is well, and I look forward to speaking to you guys very, very soon. Actually, you know what? We will do one more story. How about that? Second thought, we will leave you one more story. Make up for that lag there at the end. The Vampire of Dusseldorf, Peter Curtin. That's spelled, now I'm saying probably wrong, but it's spelled Kurten. Factory worker Peter Curtin was a quiet man whose harmless body, the harmless hobby, was birdwatching. He was unassuming, neatly groomed, impeccably polite, and a monster. Behind his gentle mask was a seething rage thirsting for victims in both numbers and savagery. His killings easily eclipsed those of his idol, Jack the Ripper. Through the summer of 1929, Curtin held the city of Dusseldorf, Germany, in a vise of fear, though the citizens did not yet know the name of their tormentor. But they knew all too well that a killer was on the loose. Almost every week, a fresh corpse was found, horribly slashed or bludgeoned to death. But older women and men and children also fell prey, often in clusters of attacks. One August day, the news of the sadistic murders of two foster children, aged 5 and 14, and the attempted murder and rape of a 26-year-old worker as well, domestic worker. Months of terror struck to a year as police searched for the killer. Parents forbade their children to play outdoors. Friends distrusted one another. Everyone they feared going out at night. Police received tips from all over Germany, and they had questioned 9,000 citizens in the city of Dusseldorf in itself, right? As for the killer, he had sent letters, identifying the police of corpses undiscovered, and once even sent them a map. And his crimes committed until the 15th total of murders and murderous attacks, it had climbed above 30. An assault charge, well, it brought police onto Curtin's door in May of 1930. What they found, however, was a man, however meek he seemed, had a criminal record spanning for 30 years. Only in custody, the prisoner confessed freely not merely to assault, but to multiple murders. After warning his listeners, you will hear many gruesome things from me. Now, Curtin said that he liked to kill. The more people, the better. Yes, if I had the means of doing so, he told authorities, I would have killed the whole masses of people, brought about catastrophes. He prowled for victims nightly, and he said that he had found extra gratification in the slayings. The prisoner was also scrutinized for the keys to his twisted character. He was the oldest of 10 children, and between beatings by his alcoholic father, the youngest developed a taste for tormenting animals and for watching houses burn. Can you imagine that? At 9, he pushed a playmate off a raft into the Rhine River. and when the third child went to the rescue, kept them both submerged until they drowned. Now, in his mid-teens, Curtin later called, found out what pleasure it gave me to try to strangle a girl I took out with me into the woods. At 16, caught stealing, he was jailed for nearly 17. Very mad individual. And which that would add up to nearly 20 years in prison for arson and theft. Which during this time that he took to poring over the exploits of Jack the Ripper. I thought what pleasure would give me to do things of that kind once I got it again, he said. Now, again, in 1913, at the age of 30, Curtin, he took robbing to the homes of beer hall owners on a busy Saturday afternoons while they were serving their patrons. During one such foray, he later confessed that he had committed his first murder since childhood, and it seemed to him to avenge his brutal past. Feeling the barkeep's 10-year-old's daughter asleep, he strangled her, then cut her throat. Next day, he lounged in a coffee cafe opposite the beer hall and overheard outraged discussion of this crime. He focused on the indignation, very satisfying. His marriage in 1922 calmed him, and it was several years before he resumed killing. After 4 years of fire setting and vicious assaults, his final secret rampage of atroc atroc athrorithses, that's how I pronounce it, began in 1921. A member of that year, in February of that year, Curtin killed an killed an 18-year-old, stabbing her 13 times during when she was during her. She would also, after he stabbed her 13 times, he would douse her body with kerosene, and he's just, yeah. Sometimes Curtin was satisfied to maim or just to frighten a victim and let her live. There was one such survivor, 20-year-old Maria Budlick, whom at last led police to the man who is by now being called the monster of Dusseldorf. Right? After his arrest, after his arrest, certain details of his confession would gain him a new nickname. He said that one of his chief satisfactions in killing was to catch the blood squirting from a victim's wounds in his mouth and swallow it. He thus became known as a vampire of Dusseldorf. After a year's study, Germany's best psychiatric minds are pronounced just as Curtin names. At trial, his defending counsel, summing up the expert's testimony, called Curtin a, a concentrated type of complex of all, you know, complex. His makeup. It's wackadoo. convicted of 9 murders and sentenced to death. Curtin acknowledged to more and to reporters when he was caught, right? So he apologized to reporters and sentenced to death. He had to acknowledge it worse. He acknowledged no remorse and said he might kill again. Just a crazy individual as well, and that's the vampire of Dusseldorf. So I hope all is well. Please do subscribe. This was my I'm back. Nonetheless, chapter 7 is complete. Hope all is well.